Quite frankly, this is a happy accident.
Kind of feels to me like it's really that tool for like the 21st century generalist.
Opposable thumbs are kind of the most important thing in human evolution. And we saw that, well, the concepts we had, by expanding them a little bit more, would really address a lot of these fields. That is where that entire story started.
I am here with the one and only Moritz Angerman, live from Taiwan. Moritz, if you'd like to, maybe you can introduce yourself a little bit, give us some context.
Sure. So yeah, hi everyone. My name is Moritz. I'm the co-founder and CTO. I've been working together with the team now for about 3 years. First in our first startup arc, and then for now a year and a half under the name Naya. I'm currently in Taiwan. We've been here for 2.5 months now, mainly working on development, on product side. So my job really is to make sure that you get the product you're expecting. Let's have a chat about the product so you hear more on what we've been up to.
Yes, let's do it. Quick introduction from me. I'm Brandon. I've also been working with Moritz and company for the past, I think, 2-3 years now as a freelancer. Now I've come on full-time to help with marketing, some creative stuff. I do a lot of the renders that you see on the website and on the Instagram. Yeah, overall just the design department / marketing strategy. So yeah, I'm really excited to bring you guys this discussion. I think it's going to be quite interesting, going into some topics about how the idea of Naya Create came about, and just overall entrepreneur business, design talks, everything in between. So excited for that.
We'll have a lot to talk about for sure.
Indeed. The concept of the Naya Create started off as like a macro pad, right? Essentially.
Correct.
So like where in the development or like the ideation process did the modules come?
Quite frankly, this is a happy accident. This is the kind of story where if you try to make an effective interface device, so something that allows you to effectively control video edits or effectively allows you to control CAD, you will not design a keyboard. Because keyboards are inherently so inefficient that it just didn't make sense even as a starting point. So when you set your own starting point, it already looks fundamentally different. And in that starting point, when you make a macro pad that is just meant for these tasks, you will automatically choose a different layout. And these layouts often involve your thumb and the area between your index finger and thumb in a very different way. And then when you use these, you realize, well, now I need to switch to a keyboard whenever I need to type something.
Right.
That's kind of annoying.
Yeah.
So it started out with exactly this kind of thing, a macro pad or a pad for hotkeys and simple input, numerical input, numpad, etc. with modules. 3D navigation, dials, etc. But then you figure out, okay, now I don't need to switch to my 3D nav device anymore, but now I need to switch to my keyboard to type. So you start adding more letters to this kind of macro pad until you have something that you can actually like halfway type with. So I back then started using a half QWERTY layout, so where you use a layer key to mirror half the keyboard onto one hand, so you can type fully with one hand. So where your Q key, when you press a macro key, becomes your P, and the macro key becomes H. So you can type simple, easy things with one hand, like searching in the domain, and because for my main work back then, CAD, you really do not want to move away from your mouse too much.
Right.
Switching to your keyboard to name a layer or search a command is just not sensible. It's not good in any way.
We have some comparison videos actually that show the inefficiency of this switching as well.
Yes,
so
on the Kickstarter.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. So that is where that started. So I then started typing on a half keyboard, but that of course eventually brings up the question of, so most people don't want to learn typing with one hand. That doesn't seem like the most effective thing, and I would never type an essay with one hand or an email, right? That just doesn't make sense. And when I type something longer, then of course I'm switching away from my mouse.
Yeah.
So why not mirror the entire thing and have a full keyboard again? And then instead of having to switch with both hands to my keyboard, I would only, switch with one hand to type. And then the next step is like, okay, now I have to switch between this and my mouse to move my mouse. But I only currently have a device on my left hand, like a 3D nav device or a dial, because that is what I needed at the time. So why not add a mousing device to my right hand? So suddenly you have a touchpad or a trackball on your right hand. We're not the first ones to do that either. There are plenty of devices online that you will find that have that kind of functionality, because it's a common need for these kinds of products. And then suddenly someone complains, so why can't I have my touchpad on my left hand because I'm left-handed? Or I use my touchpad on my laptop with my left hand. Well, yeah, that's a good question. Why can't you? There's no reason why you shouldn't be able to. I mean, we're already switching between dials and 3D navigation devices because it depends on what I'm doing. When I'm video editing, I need the dial, and when I'm in CAD, I need the 3D nav. So why not give you the option to just move the touchpad to the other side? It's very easy said, and then you try to figure it out how it will actually work, and you notice a few more problems, but they're all solvable.
Right.
And yeah, eventually you end up with this idea of, okay, it's really fully configurable. And then you start to see that the parts that you have put together actually create a much bigger total outcome than the individual parts you put in place. So once you combine your mouse motion with your keyboard, you notice, oh, I can now actually use keyboard hotkeys to change my mouse input without having to go through a complicated computer interface.
So it's like an emergent product APIs. In a way.
Exactly. Yeah, where you suddenly notice, oh wow, I can use layer keys on my dial, or I can use layer keys to change what my gestures do. And the kinds of new features that you come up with are more and more and more. Yeah, where you then see, actually, if I can use a touchpad on the left or right side, how about I use two touchpads and I configure one of them for mouse, the other for like XY input. So as a color grading tool or as a color picker, or in programs like Logic Pro to adjust fields. And then you see how like putting these parts together suddenly gives you way more options than you would have with like standalone devices.
Right.
And that was the moment where I was like, okay, this is more than a cool side project, more than something I want to have for myself because my use case was weird at the time. This is actually broad enough and has enough functionality and enough need that it might be something that not just I need.
Right.
And that is where we then started talking about this a little bit more and asked more people about their workflows, what they actually use, and how this looks in not just my world, but for everyone. And we started seeing the same complaint pop up over and over and over again online in discussions with people in those fields. And we saw that, well, the concepts we had, by expanding them a little bit more, would really address a lot of these fields. And yeah, that is where that entire story started.
You are spending a lot of different times, or like a lot of time in like different programs, and like I feel like I'm also spending a lot of time in different programs, and I feel like it's becoming more and more common that as technology advances, as the world gets more and more competitive, let's say, like people are starting to need to like learn more and more skills, more and more tasks in different programs. So I feel like this role of like a generalist is becoming more and more in demand because people are just learning so much more. The data is, like increasing more and more on the internet of how to do certain things, like learning resources are increasing. So people are expanding their skill set to a level where in some ways the software is being upgraded and like evolved, but the hardware is staying the same. And I feel like with the Create, it's really kind of putting together all of these things where it's like, what if you had a device that actually allows you to expand how you interact with all of these programs at the same time? Like, kind of feels to me like it's really that tool for like the 21st century like generalist, where it's like, oh, you do music production, oh, you do 3D design, oh, you do video editing. Like, you can have this one product and it kind of covers the entire spectrum of your skill set.
What I thought was so fascinating when we started looking deeper into this is that the input methods that are being used between all of these fields are actually really, really similar.
Right.
When we look at what color grading needs, or what we use for our general web browsing behavior, or as an Excel sheet, let's say in financial controlling, or what we need for video editing, the type of input that we use for these things is really simple. because it all had to be done with a certain constrained device set. But the type of input that we are used to is also very, very standardized. So when we provide a better input tool for this kind of input type, it immediately is applicable to various fields. And I think that was really one of the main triggers where we said, okay, this actually is broadly applicable, not just by chance, but because these fields are designed to use these certain inputs in a specific way.
When we were making the videos for the comparison content piece, we were kind of thrown aback by like the weirdness of not having to move your hand at all when selecting something like with a mouse pointer, like having this complete freedom to just kind of have your hands like sitting in a certain way. It kind of unlocked this kind of hidden bandwidth in our brain that's like, wow, now I actually have to try and keep up with the device, and the device doesn't have to keep up with me, you know? It's like we noticed like how quickly you have to kind of think to achieve the same sort of results than like you would have, for example, like on a traditional setup.
The first time I did this, I absolutely hated it.
Yeah.
Because I felt like I was the slow part now.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
The first time I used it, it felt like, I don't have the time to think about this while I move my hand to my mouse. Oh
exactly,
no.
Yeah,
What's the next thing I wanted to do? Like suddenly the bottleneck was no longer the computer side or the input side of things, but my thinking process.
Yes, yeah.
I was like, oh no, I'm the slow one now. It was really funny because that was the first time I noticed how much time I actually lose with these things.
Yeah.
Because it gave me so much time to just slowly consider. So, like, it's so absurd how massive the impact of that is, that you immediately notice that your things go so much faster that you now don't even have enough time to think about the next step anymore.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Really interesting.
It's also, to me, it's a pointer to like how much potential like we still have to unlock. Like, you know, if for example, like we know, like if this is kind of like the next step in like computer interaction hardware, then like obviously we've heard, you know, like people like Elon Musk talk about, you know, like brain like chip interfaces, how, you know, we have to like minimize the bandwidth between, you know, the information stream that we output and input. I feel like this is kind of a step towards that in a hardware perspective, where it's like, okay, we're not doing this kind of like interaction in like this digital latent space, but it's more so of like, you know, tactile interaction. And it's just interesting to me how like, like it actually does prove that there is still some ground to be made in terms of, you know, how efficient and how quick we can be in terms of interacting with things on a hardware level.
Yeah, like the entire story on the imitation of how we convey information is really curious, because we contextualize how we exchange information in the manner in which we output it. So in speech, we have a very different speed from reading or from typing, purely because of the way we do it, the mechanical way of which we do it. So when people count and they can use their hands, they count at a different speed from when they can't use their hands. And all of these kinds of, how the motoric part of it influences how you think about a process. And when we think about a process of selecting something, then that thought process involves moving our hand to the device that moves the pointer.
Right.
That is a fundamental part of how we think about selecting an item. But the fact that we now can skip that entire process from what we have to think about, it not only changes the motorical part of executing, but it changes the thought of how do I do this thing. In the most simple task, web browsing, we see some really interesting results there when people usually use specific hotkey combinations to switch between tabs or to move tabs around. You can give people very simple task sheets of, hey, can you execute these things? And then the ways they do it is the main effect in how quickly they can get these things done. And their thought process is tuned towards the executional aspect of doing that. So let's say open an tab, move that tab to your 5th tab, pin it to the bar, and then switch to your 1st tab before moving 3 tabs left. For most people, this is a task they switch to their mouse, right? They will start moving tabs around by clicking them and dragging them. Some people will know the hotkey combination for this and will do it via hotkey combinations.
Right.
But I can tell you those hotkey combinations in a quick series are not fun and involve some serious finger gymnastics. But by having a different input device, you can suddenly do this with, just turning a dial and pressing a single key and keeping turning the dial.
Right.
It's a very different way of how you have to think about a task and how you contextualize a task. There will be a learning curve. That's the reality of things.
That is, yeah.
Hopefully, the curve here isn't a learning curve of having to change something that you wanted, like that you did exactly the same way before, and you just want to do the same thing again, which is what we have seen very frequently on, changing keyboards or any other item of habit, but where you actually get a new option. So you're not changing to the same thing before, but you're changing to a new process. And generally that process is a lot more rewarding because you don't feel like you're stuck or trying to get to the same outcome again.
Right.
You're trying to get to a different outcome. So yeah, I think that's fundamentally what we want to achieve here, a different outcome. I'm super looking forward to professionals and experts in every field getting their hands on this and showing us what they can do. Because I think there's one aspect that I'm even more curious about than efficiency, and that is the areas where the change categorical. So we can measure performance of people in doing the same task faster. But there are some things where you basically where a task was either so inefficient or so difficult to execute that most people would just not do it at all and use a different solution to try to get the same result. Those are the kinds of tasks where I'm even more curious on what kind of things can we now do that were just outright not beforehand. And that's where I'm most curious where people will take this device.
Yeah, it's a nod to like the emergent features and properties of this sort of device where it's like, you have so many different possibilities and combinations that like we don't even know some of the things that people could be doing with this. Like that's the interesting and like really exciting part. It's like it's this super complex product, but then obviously like we know like from complexity arises like emergent properties.
Already when we hear people share in our community what their jobs are and what they intuitively already saw, I need this for that task. There was someone who posted in our group that they work in neurology and that they could use MRI images because they're also made as layers, and they could use Tune to scroll through these MRI images. And that is a use case I would have never thought of. But yeah, it makes total sense. And combining that particular functionality of what you would get with a keyboard suddenly opens up a whole new field that we never even considered. And I bet there are hundreds more like this.
There's still some market trends that you factor in when trying to create this innovative product. That's like how do you choose to kind of keep certain things but then innovate on others?
It's a very good question. When we started ARC, we had a lot of talk about like exactly this kind of field. If you look at our logo for ARC, it's a Venn diagram. And it's exactly about that field. It's this idea of, what are the core ideas, the essential ideas that form a product that are absolutely necessary? And what new ideas can we introduce to this? And this kind of like reductionist approach where you first consider, what do we actually need from this product? And what is just kind of added stuff that we just have but isn't essential to the product function? That I think is always the first step.
How did it look like with Naya, for example?
So the core idea there was, what jobs do we actually need to do with our keyboards, and what are the kinds of functions that we fulfill on a daily basis, and what do we need for that? It started very much with the why do our current keyboards look the way they are, and the historical background of it. And history is often a very good teacher on what the actual essential idea is, because very often you see in the changes that are made to a product that something wasn't right yet, because otherwise you wouldn't change it. So the things that are added or changed, the things that are most changed are often the most important ones. Like with the keyboard, we very quickly figured out, QWERTY, as bad as it is, you don't really want to touch it, because force of habit is just too big. There are better options. There certainly are better options, but it's easy enough for people to do it themselves. We're building around these options is generally a very niche topic. Let's talk about like corded devices, etc. These kinds of things. So you want to keep a certain familiarity of, key presses aren't sounds, they are specific letters and functions and these kinds of things. But then the entire arrangement of it, while it has a certain amount of training in it, is much easier to identify as an actual problem because we see the negatives it causes, right? We see much clearer, okay, this actually causes physical pain in most people, in many people of the workforce, and causes work absenteeism and everything. So those things kind of had to change. Our keyboards aren't meant to like break our arms. They're meant to type something or get a job done. So
you're referring
that kind of conflicted.
So you're referring to like the layout, like the QWERTY layout, for example, being suboptimal for like wrist health.
The QWERTY layout is just a slight inefficiency.
Okay,
it isn't necessarily unhealthy.
But more so the form factor of,
or at least
traditional keyboards, you mean?
Yeah, we have seen a lot of companies that have like built products like this, right? We're not new when it comes to making a split and ergonomic keyboard or making an also linear layout. Those are well established ideas for many decades now.
Mm-hmm.
And for quite a while, actually, Microsoft's ergonomic keyboard was the best-selling keyboard in the world. They're like ergonomic keyboard, right? We're at over 120,000 units a month. So really, this idea that this needs to change is absolutely not new. The problem really has been with what keeps people on a platform like this. So what incentive do you give someone to say, okay, I actually do have to change? We have one group that, well, they really don't have a choice. That is people who have active RSI complaints, people who have active complaints because of the ergonomics of their keyboard.
Mm-hmm.
They have to change because they simply cannot use a regular keyboard anymore.
Yeah.
But most of these people will very much agree that the moment you notice this problem, you regret not having done something about it much earlier, because many of these problems are basically irreversible. I talked a little bit about the letter keys being in a certain arrangement because of legacy and why this is so difficult to change. But I think when we look one step beyond that, what has happened since, I quite a bit ago mentioned it's interesting to see what changes over time, because that often symbols what is the actual current need for these products. But we had typewriters, we had, well, letters, and eventually added numbers. So we had an alphanumerical keyboard. There were no control or shift keys or alt or like these kinds of things. That was not a thing. So all of these keys were just arranged in a square around the alphanumerical keys. That's the only reason they are where they are. There is no reason why our backspace is in that corner or our Windows key is in that location. That is indeed also what we then saw with the ergonomics keyboards. What was most changed, right? We barely see people who put the control key instead of your D key in the middle of the keyboard, but we very often see changes to this kind of key layout. That, I think, also brings us to what we believe to be the main reason why we should make the switch, or how we can give people an incentive to make that switch and give them an additional feature, an additional function that they didn't have on any other keyboard ever before, that keeps you coming back to a more ergonomic or a solution that is better for the health of your arms. And that is with our modules.
Right.
We have added something in the most notable change. So usually when you split a keyboard, it is purely for the sake of splitting it. The main reason is you want to do something ergonomic. You want to do something that you know is better for your health. But if that comes at a significant downside for your productivity, you're not going to stick with it.
Exactly.
Very few people are. I admire those who do. But by giving you a reason why you should split it, so that you can use that space in between your keyboard more effectively by, for example, adding modules, is what we really hope will accelerate this field further, to bring more people who otherwise wouldn't move into this field in. And I think the notable part here is when we look at how we type on our smartphones, we type purely with our thumbs, right? Like our thumbs do everything.
Yeah.
And then on our computer, our thumbs together have a single key that they hit over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And really giving you more options to use your thumb and to interact with the kind of complexity that our thumbs can do. That just gives you so many more options that make Create better than basically anything that is currently on the market.
Yeah, no, actually, it's a very good point, because like while we were me and Nicholas were in Hanover for the trade show, like we had some discussions with some guys at Autodesk, and some of them also were saying something like, like we're currently the thumb generation, because we do everything like with our thumbs, like in terms of like game controller joysticks or like iPhones or like all these complex manipulations are like done with our thumb, and it makes sense because I feel like the thumb, I think, is a very dynamic sort of
distinguishing feature.
Exactly, like of the human hand, and it's like,
yes,
I think like with the modules, it really does like kind of address that elephant in the room with keyboards, where it's like, oh, the only function of my thumb is to like press the space bar,
yeah, like, opposable thumbs are kind of the most important thing in human evolution. Let's not talk about our brains, but from a motoric skill perspective.
Yeah, definitely.
And in our keyboards, it's like you could ask a few people if they press their spacebar with their left or right hand, and some do it with both hands, depending on which hand types.
Yeah.
But for most people, it's really not used much.
Yeah, it's
By
true.
changing the form factor a little bit, we can really open up some options that you otherwise wouldn't have. Putting these control keys that were just randomly assorted around the box into a location that is actually much more usable.
Because obviously, like, going into this, like, you knew that, as you mentioned before, like, you started off with like a single problem, and then you said, oh, why can't it have this? Added that, why can't I have this? Added that, so you had like this kind of progressive sort of like train of thought of like, I had this initial problem, but now after kind of like trying to solve this problem, I ran into like a few more, and then like I solved them, and then it kind of snowballed into this super complex product that you said, hey, this actually has the potential to solve problems that are much broader than the one that I'm currently kind of facing now that other people might have as well. These are kind of like answering some of the known unknowns. Like I have this known problem, and like there's a sort of unknown solution that I'm kind of trying to like get to, but then there's also these like unknown unknowns that you didn't even know like you would kind of encounter before like finding them. Like, do you have any examples of like any like unknown unknowns that you kind of just uncovered along the way and you're like, oh, that's fun,
There are plenty. There are plenty of fields where we knew that we would be going in a little bit blind. So for example, with a product of this level of complexity, you need to have a fairly clear strategy on which parts are computed where. So you move your finger over a touchpad. Now there are quite a few different checkpoints that you go through before that signal is sent to your computer, and even aren't done with the journey until your system knows what to do with that motion that you just did on a touchpad. There are so many different touch points in between that you have to go through. Okay, which keys are pressed on the right side? How does the right side of the keyboard communicate with the left side to the module, then from the module back? What is already computed on the module? What is computed on the keyboard? What is done system side? So this entire pipeline, mapping that out in detail, was a journey. So yeah, that was a real journey.
And then there's also, I guess, like the topic of having modules on both sides seems trivial, but then you have the like issue of flipping the pins, or like, how does the signal then, know that it's on the left side, not the right side? Like, I feel like that's also a crazy one, right?
Yeah, like the two-way communication between the module and the keyboard, because we have to quickly like think about when does the input signal decide whether it comes from the left or from the right side. So when you move on a touchpad up, well, on a laptop you know where up is.
Yeah.
When you switch a module between sides, how do you know where up is?
Yeah.
And then you have to figure out, okay, where in the process do I compute that step? So that's the firmware side. You will eventually have chats with Kalen about this in much greater detail, I'm sure. Another really interesting one is the issues that come with sourcing. Purely given the size of our company, the kinds of challenges come along with finding partners for every single piece and figuring out, okay, where can we use something that is standardized? How do we exactly make this part to be producible, repairable, manufacturable, but also in a sensible price range, but also keeps all of the other features we want intact, especially given the kinds of space limitations that we are working with. And that every single change, like every tiny change you make, has ripple effects on so many other things. I think that was one of the longest journeys, or the most difficult things to get finalized. The topics I just talked about are all purely product side. I think we shouldn't neglect that most of the challenges, like if we talk about a broader spectrum, what are the challenges on the product side? Most challenges that come from building a hardware company are on corporate structure wise. Your inventory, your warehousing, your operations, your logistics, your supply chains, your initial sourcing, but also your financing, your pre-financing. Because there are so many moving parts lead time management, making sure that quality control is flawless. There are a lot of moving parts that can very, very quickly spiral extremely out of control. There, we are extremely lucky that we have the experience from having run hardware for a while now, because starting with a product of high complexity in a field like this requires some serious expertise if you build this entire structure from scratch. Yeah, I think if we really look at what are the hardest things, then I'm happy that I'm working on product side.
Okay. I'm happy I'm in marketing because
Yeah.
I could handle the product side.
There are a lot of moving parts that have to work well and have to really be aligned perfectly as well. So between all of the different segments of a company, everything always has to be aligned. If operations does one thing, marketing does a completely different one, and nothing has anything to do with product, then you really run into issues. That is the kind of scenarios that really are the most challenging, I feel like.
Right. So given your previous knowledge with hardware, with Arc, and now very newly with Naya, is there anything that you would have done differently with the knowledge that you have now?
Everything. No, I think the better question is, what would you not have done different?
Okay.
There aren't many things. With every week and every month, you learn something new. What you learned, you will try to apply. And in that application, you're like, why didn't we do this earlier?
Yeah.
There is a reason why companies, once they have certain established procedures, don't move away from their procedures because they're so used to them, even if there's a better option.
Mm-hmm.
But when you see what the new option can do, you notice why, well, the other option probably wasn't great. And obviously, after you always know better. But there's no realistic world where you know the afterwards beforehand. So asking why didn't I do it right away this way is, well, because you didn't know. It's also really interesting that whenever a new person comes on board, they bring their own experience, their own knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
And their own expertise. And then they say, hey, why don't we do things this way? And they're like, yeah, that's right. Why don't we do things this way? Let's do that.
Right.
And that happens in every single field. That happens product side, that happens on logistics side, operations, finances, marketing. Really, whenever a new person comes in, it's like, okay, here's everything we do. What do we think we do wrong?
Yeah.
It's like, let's talk about everything that is wrong and fix
for
it.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's one of the most fun procedures. Hearing someone new come in and just rip apart everything you've been doing. It's great.
Yeah.
I had a conversation a while ago with a party that became one of our investors later on, where we had a bit of a chat about this environment of, well, everything being kind of put together as it is needed in the moment, because you don't have the time to spend month and month on setting up a specific procedure that you really don't need yet in much detail.
Yeah.
So it's like everyone just puts in their first best guess. What's so fun about this is that everyone is engaged in, what is the procedure here? Let's put something together.
Yeah.
So a lot of new ideas come up, and in a place where a lot of new ideas come up, even if 99% of the ideas are terrible, there is a percent of ideas that are actually great.
Mm-hmm.
And that percent, I think, is a huge part of being a startup.
Mm-hmm.
There are so many ideas because so many people are engaged with it, so many people enjoy being in that environment and have ideas about everything, that the most challenging part is figuring out, okay, so here's a million ideas. What do we do with them?
Yeah.
And the larger a corporation gets, the more you run into the issue of, okay, so what ideas do we have, right? You run out of ideas because everything is too well established and too well evaluated.
Yeah.
And on the opposite end, you have the problem of having too many ideas and needing to figure out which ones you actually pursue.
Exactly.
So yeah, it's a really, really interesting dynamic that happens there.
Thanks for watching all the way until the end. I hope you enjoyed the discussion. I'm excited to bring you more videos like this in the future, where we will be going into more technical aspects regarding the Naya Create, both in regards to the keyboard, as well as diving deeper into the individual modules that we are offering as well. I'm excited to mention that Moritz will be coming back from Taiwan very shortly. So future episodes will be also featuring Moritz, as well as the other members of the Naya team, all in the same place here in the Netherlands office in our new podcast studio that we are building. I very much look forward to taking a deep dive into the overall product as a whole, going into the evolution of the prototypes, to deep diving into the certain modules that we have. We also hope to involve you guys, the community, in providing any sort of feedback that you have that you think can make this series better. We would really appreciate that because we really want to provide the best quality content that we can to you guys as possible, both to help you guys understand who we are, what our philosophy is, but also to give you better insight towards the product that we are creating. In the meantime, we encourage you guys to participate in discussions both in the comment section below as well as on our Discord, where we can connect in a more casual setting, where you can talk to members of the Naya team as well as other members of the Naya community in regards to certain topics you may want us to cover in these series, as well as some other questions that you may have about our product in general. I look forward to having more of these talks and making more of these videos. Thanks again, and yeah, see you soon.